This is where my heart is. Gospel music. There's no music like gospel music, number one, because it speaks of him. And Albertina.
The story of Pastor Shirley Caesar is one that begins with incredible hope, deep faith, and an unshakable voice, but over time, it becomes a heartbreaking story of love, loss, and betrayal. For more than 7 decades, she gave her life to gospel music and service to others. She sang for God, for justice, and for love. But when the lights faded and the applause ended, she found herself surrounded not by peace, but by pain, the kind that no song could heal. Shirley Ann Caesar was born on October 13, 1938, in Durham, North Carolina, the 10th of 13 children in a family that barely had enough to survive. Her father, James Caesar, worked long hours in a tobacco factory and sang on weekends with a small gospel group called the Just Come Four. His voice was deep, soulful, and full of conviction, but no matter how many songs he sang or shifts he worked, it was never enough to feed a family of 13. Her mother, Hannah, was partially disabled and often in pain, yet she found a way to keep her children alive, sometimes stretching a single meal across an entire day. Shirley's earliest memories weren't of toys or games, but of struggle. When she was 7 years old, her father suddenly collapsed from a brain seizure and died right in front of her. That was the day her childhood ended. With no money and a house full of hungry children, Shirley made a decision that would shape the rest of her life. She began singing in churches to bring home money. At an age when most children were still learning to read, she became the family's breadwinner. She didn't have the luxury to cry or grieve. Her voice became her way of keeping her family alive. By the time she was 10, she was already known in Durham as Baby Shirley. She was small, shy, and had to stand on boxes so people could see her on stage, but when she opened her mouth, even grown men cried. Her voice was raw and full of something far beyond her years. At 14, she began traveling alone through the Jim Crow South, singing in segregated churches and staying overnight in bus stations that wouldn't even let her sit inside. Some preachers paid her 50 cents for an entire week of singing while pocketing hundreds for themselves. She faced racism, hunger, and loneliness, but she never stopped. Her mother's health was failing fast. By 12, Shirley had become her full-time caregiver, helping her walk, feeding her, changing her clothes, and still finding time to sing every weekend. For the next 30 years, even after she became famous, she never hired a nurse. It was always Shirley doing it all herself. Her mother's pain became her strength. Every hardship fueled the fire in her music. In 1956, she graduated from Hillside High School and went to college to study business. But one day during a typing test, she heard a voice call her name. No one else heard it. Later that day, the voice returned louder, saying, "Behold, I have called you from your mother's womb, and I have anointed your lips to preach the gospel." That moment changed everything. She dropped out of college immediately, convinced that the voice came from God. 2 years later, at only 19, Shirley joined the Caravans, one of the biggest gospel groups in America. She walked up to their leader, Albertina Walker, and told her boldly that she could sing every part, and then she proved it. On stage, Shirley was electric. She didn't just sing, she moved, shouted, and cried. Her performances broke every rule of traditional gospel, but audiences couldn't get enough. She became the soul of the group. Still, behind the curtain, life was hard. They traveled over 300 days a year through the Deep South, often turned away from hotels because of the color of their skin. They slept on buses, ate what they could afford, and watched white gospel groups make 5 times their pay. By 1966, Shirley was exhausted. She wanted creative control and fair pay, but when Albertina refused, she walked away from the Caravans. Everyone told her she was making a mistake. Even the legendary Mahalia Jackson warned her not to go solo. But Shirley followed her faith instead of fear. She signed a $50,000 contract with Hob Records, the biggest ever given to a black female gospel artist at the time. Her debut solo album, My Testimony, came out in 1967. Critics didn't know what to make of it. She sang about poverty, racism, and faith in the darkest moments. Some said it was too raw, others said it wasn't Christian enough. But the public loved it. Her honesty drew people in. Her career took off, but discrimination didn't stop. Male artists earned far more, and producers constantly tried to control her. They told her to tone down her preaching, Posters highlighted her looks instead of her voice. Even after winning her first Grammy in 1971, she still faced sexism and manipulation. That win had been delayed for years because, as later revealed, the Grammy voting had been rigged. Yet she kept going. She never fought back publicly. She believed her music would speak for her. In 1972, Shirley won another Grammy for her fiery version of Put Your Hand in the Hand of the Man from Galilee. It made her the first black female gospel singer to truly break into the mainstream. But instead of celebration, she faced backlash. Purists accused her of turning sacred music into entertainment. They said she was diluting the gospel with pop influences. Shirley simply smiled and said, "I'm still singing for God." That Grammy proved she could bring gospel to the world, and the world was ready to listen. Her ministry grew beyond music. In 1969, she had started the Shirley Caesar Outreach Ministries, using her own concert money to feed the poor. After seeing a heartbreaking news story about starving children on Thanksgiving, she vowed to give half her earnings to charity. She refused to take government aid, even when her own finances suffered. Her generosity nearly bankrupted her more than once, but she never regretted it. In the late 1970s, she pushed gospel into new territory again by mixing it with funk and soul. The album Message for the People sold over 1 million copies and made her a household name. It also made her controversial. Many pastors accused her of selling out, but Shirley knew she wasn't singing for approval. She was singing to reach people where they were. Then in 1983, Shirley's life took a turn she had long prayed for. She married Bishop Harold Ivory Williams, a respected pastor and musician. She was 44 years old and deeply in love. Their wedding was beautiful and full of symbolism. Her ring had 9 diamonds, each representing a spiritual gift. Together, they led a thriving 2,500-member church in Raleigh, North Carolina. But her happiness came with new challenges. Some fans thought she would quit singing to become a pastor's wife. Others accused her of abandoning her purpose. Shirley refused to choose between her 2 callings. She kept singing and preaching, determined to serve both the stage and the pulpit. That same year, tragedy nearly struck. During a winter tour, her bus skidded on ice, and Shirley was badly injured. She later said she saw the other side before being revived by paramedics. That near-death experience inspired one of her greatest songs, "Jesus, I Love Calling Your Name." It became a comfort for countless grieving families. But for Shirley, it was also a reminder of how close she had come to leaving this world. She continued winning awards and hearts throughout the 1980s. Her collaboration with Al Green in 1985 won her another Grammy. Her courage also showed in other ways. At the height of the AIDS crisis, when most churches shut their doors to victims, Shirley opened hers. She offered food, hospital visits, and funerals for patients no one else would help. Some church members threatened to leave, others sent her death threats. She didn't care. She told them, "Jesus loves everyone." Over 4 years, her church quietly helped over 200 families. She never sought praise for it. She just did what she believed was right. But years of non-stop touring and preaching took a toll. By 1989, doctors found nodules on her vocal cords. She was performing 150 shows a year, and her voice was breaking down. She needed steroid shots just to finish concerts. Her Live in Chicago album, recorded through pain, earned her Artist of the Decade at the Stellar Awards, but her acceptance speech was so faint she could barely speak. She stood there trembling, whispering her thanks to God while the audience wept. The 1990s brought both triumph and heartbreak. Her 1991 album, He's Working It Out for You, topped the gospel charts and even broke into the R&B rankings, a rare feat for gospel music. In 1996, she sang alongside Whitney Houston and CeCe Winans at the Grammys, uniting generations in one powerful performance. For Shirley, it was more than music, it was ministry. In 1999, the U.S. government honored her with the National Heritage Fellowship, the highest award for traditional artists. Standing in Washington, D.C., she looked back on the little girl who once sang for 50 cents to feed her family. She had come so far, but even then, life would test her again. In 2014, after 31 years of marriage, Shirley lost her husband, Bishop Williams. It shattered her. He had been her partner in everything, her ministry, her music, her faith. His death left a hole no song could fill. But instead of comfort, she faced conflict. His adult children, her stepchildren, turned against her in a bitter legal battle over his estate. The woman who had given away most of her income to help others was now accused of greed by her own family. Lawsuits and accusations flew, dragging her through emotional hell. She rarely spoke publicly about it, but those close to her said she was heartbroken. As if that wasn't enough, fake stories began spreading online claiming that she had died or was gravely ill. Rumors said she had throat cancer. Others said she was bankrupt or bedridden. Each time she had to appear in videos to reassure fans she was alive. "Unless I'm a living dead person," she joked in one interview, "I don't know anything about it." Behind the humor was exhaustion. She was a woman who had faced everything: racism, sexism, loss, and betrayal. Yet people still found ways to tear her down. In 2016, one of her old performances unexpectedly went viral. A remix of her 1988 sermon song, "Hold My Mule," turned into the You Name It challenge on social media. Millions of people around the world were dancing and laughing to her list of Thanksgiving foods: beans, greens, potatoes, tomatoes. It made her an internet sensation at 78 years old. For a moment, she was back in the spotlight, but even that came with mixed feelings. Some people mocked it, not realizing the sacred roots of the original song. When asked how she felt, Shirley smiled and said she was grateful, but hoped people would remember the message behind the music. She continued to perform into her late 70s, recording songs about emotional pain and mental health. In It's All Right, It's Okay with Anthony Hamilton, she sang about depression and loneliness with a vulnerability she had never shown before. It connected deeply with fans who saw her as both an icon and a survivor. Yet even after all her Grammys, honors, and decades of service, Shirley Caesar's greatest struggle was not in her career, but in her personal life. Losing her husband, battling family conflict, and watching lies about her spread across the internet hurt her more than anything fame had ever given. For a woman who had devoted her life to healing others, she found herself standing alone, betrayed by the people she loved most. Still, she never lost her faith. Through all of it, poverty, racism, loss, and loneliness, Shirley Caesar never stopped believing that God had chosen her for a purpose. She once said, "If I can help somebody as I pass along, then my living shall not be in vain." Those words defined her life. She gave everything she had, sometimes more than she could afford, to serve others. Her tragedy wasn't that she failed. It was that she succeeded in everything except finding peace for herself. Today, Pastor Shirley Caesar is remembered as the First Lady of Gospel Music, a woman whose voice built churches, inspired nations, and comforted generations. But behind that title is a human story of a girl who sang to survive, a woman who gave her heart to the world, and a widow who learned that even faith cannot always protect you from heartbreak. Her songs taught millions to keep believing, even when life breaks you down. Because for Shirley Caesar, faith was never about having an easy life. It was about singing through the pain and trusting that one day the music would heal her too.